get to explore the wise men, which is a part of the Christmas story we know a little bit about, but not a lot. So these three guys, they come out of the east, they follow this star, and they're looking for Jesus, and they've got some gifts for him. But why are these characters so significant in this story?
Yeah. There's we actually know very little about them. But for Jewish, especially the first kind of Jewish audiences who would have heard the story of Jesus, what these characters are called and the gifts that they bring, when they're bringing them, these would have all activated all kinds of different associations for especially Jewish people who grew up on their scriptures from childhood. So you called them the wise men, and they've been called that through a lot of the history of the telling and retelling of the story. They've also been called the kings, like the three kings from the Orient. In most modern Bible translations, they're called the Magi, connected to our word magic.
That's a cooler name, I think.
Well, I think so too.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it helps us understand their portrait a little bit more. They were not like stage magicians, cats out of hats.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So the Magi means an ancient astrologer, which was a form of what's called divination. It still happens today, in like horoscopes, and people pay attention to that kind of stuff. But this was a big deal in the ancient world. All of the ancient cultures around the people of Israel believed that the gods communicated messages to people through the patterns and the movements of the stars. So we have like NASA and the Hubble telescope, and that's what we think of the stars.
Yeah.
But that's not the case for most of human history. The stars are divine beings talking to us by their movements. And so these guys are professional astrologers who live in a distant land. We're not told, it's just from the distant east. So if you know anything about the Old Testament, you know that they believe in one true creator God and don't worship the stars, certainly don't think they're talking to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the stuff of like the Canaanites, nations around them. So when these characters come onto the scene, there's a lot of radars going off, red alerts, like pagan sorcerers have just arrived in our land. This is not normal, So that's not something that we normally think of when we think of the Christmas story.
Yeah.
We think of, oh, awesome, welcome. We don't think of ancient pagan astrologers, but that's what they are.
And then they get to town and they meet with King Herod, right? And he kind of wants them to go.
Yeah.
They tell them what they're looking for, and he's like, "Okay, we'll go find it and report back to me." Right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here's what's remarkable: is kings pay attention to these figures. So usually, kings consult them, pay them lots of money to have them know whether I should go fight a battle or water my crops or this kind of thing. And so these guys show up in town. Yeah, King Herod is very interested to know that there's another king being born that he's never heard of before. King Herod murdered people in his own family. So, he's not a good person. And he's not the kind of person you want to receive the news that, there's another king being born. So that, it happened. Sometimes I wonder if those guys regretted telling him because it resulted in a really horrible set of events. But there you go. So they go to Bethlehem and they end up right at the house of baby Jesus. It's just remarkable. So here's another thing. Nowhere does it say that there were only three of them. What they bring are three gifts, which are the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Which is like they're bringing essentially like cash.
Yeah.
They're bringing cash, really nice forms of incense, which aren't just fancy like they are today. People lived in much smellier conditions, so like incense was a part of daily life. And then really like fine fragrant oils, which is like the myrrh. But the way these would be received is like a mountain of cash. They're receiving really, really expensive gifts. And you have to wonder, the next thing that's going to happen is they have to flee into a multi-year exile. And Joseph's a tradesman. Mm-hmm. So like, how do you think they covered their expenses over the next 2 years while he's scraping together work. He just got a whole bunch of cash brought to him by pagan sorcerers. This story's so crazy. This is the stuff you don't get in the little nativities from the nativity scene.
Right? So what do you think, like, this whole story shows us about how God works in our own life? It seems like all their steps were just orchestrated, like perfect timing.
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we could just, like, look at a day or two in our own lives and, like, see the divine hand and how it all works together? We don't get that privilege most of the time. To me, what's remarkable about the story of the Magi is that none of the extended normal ways that God typically works are evident in the story. So that the prophets or the kings of Israel, people or leaders within Jerusalem, these are pagan sorcerers from a distant land who were doing the things they normally do to hear from other gods. And then what they happen to, like, tune in to the radio line from the God of Israel. And that God would accommodate him and reveal himself to them in that way. The end result being that they're the first worshipers of the Messiah. And they also give, the Holy Family the money they need to flee into exile. But he does it in a completely, what we might think is unconventional, even scandalous or unorthodox kind of way. And so these stories create a category for us that God isn't as bound to what we might think are his normal or acceptable ways of working in our lives. And that might actually be kind of bothersome.
Yeah.
But it also, it helps us gain a bigger sense. There's a bigger story that's bigger than just my own situation. And God's at work with all people in ways that I certainly don't even comprehend. And it's okay that I don't understand most of it. What matters is that I'm just faithful to the thing that's in front of me. And so that's what they did. And then that's what Joseph and Mary have to do as they flee into exile with all this cash brought to them by pagan sorcerers. But that's apparently God can roll that way if he purposes to.
Yeah, and thank the wise men of the Magi for the first Christmas gifts, right?
Serious. Yeah, exactly. Yes, children around the world are very thankful for this story.
Special thanks to Tim and the Bible Project for partnering with us to make Humans of Bethlehem. They make incredible videos that clearly show how the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. Definitely check out their channel and videos using the links below. You can watch the full Humans of Bethlehem series right over here, or you can subscribe to Way Nation for more hilarious and meaningful videos right over here.